There'll be two parts to my talk. I'll first make some remarks about the second edition, which just been launched. Second, I'll speak about the lead chapter in the book, chapter 2. It's preceded by an overview of part 1, which is called chapter 1. Now, each of the three parts of the book have overviews. Part 1, 2, and 3 were edited respectively by me, Lilian G, and Gary Rawnsley. So part overviews have been written by each of us. Part 1 notes several alternative understandings of soft power, competing or complementary, not least of all Joseph Nye's seminal ideas. It does so with chapters that deal with soft power conceptualization, soft power measurement, and connecting soft power with other concepts. Part 2 addresses soft power and contemporary issues. Chapters examine new technology and soft power intentions, soft power and states' performance during the global health crisis, the public health crisis, and soft power and values. Part 3 investigates cases from around the world. Three themes are identified in the overview: diminished state monopoly on soft power, normative soft power, and soft power in narratives. Soft power has often been described as a theory for the policy-focused field of public diplomacy. But soft power, with its powerful influence on policy communities belonging to states, has itself been described as being weak on theory. The first edition sought to deepen the theoretical inquiry into soft power in relation to public diplomacy. This second edition seeks to further develop theoretical understanding of soft power without linking it to public diplomacy. There are three terms in the title of the chapter that beg clarification. These are experiential, attraction-based, and unintended. First, what's the need for an experiential model? Isn't Nye's model of soft power as a nation's culture, political values, and foreign policy enough? Alexander Vuving differentiates between soft power resources and soft power currencies, both being sources. In his short 2009 conference paper, he says, the delicate difference between power resource and power currency is comparable to the one between a structure and its architecture. A power currency is property that causes power. Power currencies are usually properties of resources or activities. The currencies are benignity, brilliance, and beauty. In a longer 2019 article, Vuving says, for soft power, it's the agent's good qualities that, when perceived positively by the audience, cause the responses that confer soft power on the agent. Agents are themselves sources when imbued with attractive qualities. But how does this relate to the idea that soft power is about winning hearts and minds? Let's go to the heart and mind of the matter through looking at Immanuel Kant's Vermorgian, or faculties of mind. These are feeling, cognition, and desire. My representation of Kant's Vermorgian is a simplification of Jankowiak's explanation. All three faculties or capabilities have a priori and a posteriori representations. Let's look at feelings first. I should point out that Brian Masumi has written that feelings are personal and biographical, emotions are social, and affects are pre-personal. We're looking here at personal feelings. Feelings at the higher level respond to values such as beauty, the sublime, moral respect, and hope, all Kantian values. At the lower level, feelings are responses to sensual pleasures. For cognition, at the higher level, are a priori reasoning, making judgments, and understanding. At the lower level, there is experience of sensory stimuli that can be observed and recorded. There needs to be motivation or desire for action for proximate outcomes to take place. At the higher level, this is long-term fancy or will. At the lower level, this is passing fancy. In psychology, valence refers to pleasantness or unpleasantness of emotional stimuli. As said by Kautsky and others, nearly all events and experiences such as faces, sounds, music, art, pictures, written or spoken language, and many others can be classified along this dimension as more or less positive or negative. Valence is employed by Mannheim as a general sense of favor, neutrality, or disfavor associated with the portrayal of a given subject. The term valence is used in the experiential theory to include responses to feeling and understanding in a unified way. Electrophysiological recordings, electroencephalography, and magnetoencephalography are being used routinely to detect feeling and cognition. As proposed in experiential theory of attraction-based influence, these technologies may be used to establish soft power as experience. My chapter identifies 6 ways of speaking about soft power. There are more. The first is as Nye's theory. The second, third, fourth, and fifth are shaped by Nye's theory. The second and third are as source and resource, terms used mostly interchangeably by Nye. I prefer to think of resource as a source that an agent purposefully activates. Nye, in the fourth way of thinking of soft power, identifies soft power outcomes in his models. In policy narratives, and this is the fifth way, that are influenced by Nye's model, one often hears of soft power as an attribute of a state, such as in Australian soft power. This objectification allows use of phrases such as wielding soft power being brandished like a sword. However, Nye also uses the phrase engendering soft power. Speaking of soft power as experience in hearts and minds is a way of conceptualizing it as something experienced in hearts and minds, or through emotion, cognition, and motivation. I use the term attraction-based influence because this includes soft power and unintended attraction-based influence. The latter is a self-engendered experience of attraction when encountering a source. I seek to reduce the factors of attraction, to distill them to virtue and virtuosity. These are a reduction of values associated with Kant's Vermögen of the mind. I define virtue as humanist, ideational, behavioral, and material outputs of individual or collective actors that can result in attraction-based influence in like-minded others. Virtuosity is defined as beautifully or brilliantly crafted, ideational, behavioral, and material outputs of individuals or collective actors that can result in attraction-based influence in like-minded others. I refer to valence as a measurable response to virtue and virtuosity in message content and behavior in the first edition, but I observed that the connection between soft power resources and winning hearts and minds had not been addressed. Experiential theory does this by drawing on Immanuel Kant's theory of mind. I can deal with the use of attraction-based influence instead of soft power and unintended influence together. I follow Harold Laswell's and Abraham Kaplan's insight that power is intended influence. I conclude that when influence is unintended, it should not be called power or soft power. This makes a big difference because agents' intentions often color observers' judgment of their experience of influence. Here on the cover at the left, we see young people at a rave. Let's say they're dancing to K-pop. Some make hearts with their arms, signaling that they love the music. What about this could they love? They could love the virtuosity of composition and performance, including their own performance on the dance floor. The lyrics could hold notions of virtue, for example, in Blackpink's You Never Know, where fans are motivated to pursue their dreams despite the odds. Well, here we have Nye's two models. The first, the one at the top, is a direct effects model. And here, foreign policy elites in one country seek to influence foreign policy elites in another country in order to influence decisions which will lead to the kind of outcomes which the first country prefers. The second, in its purest sense, the indirect effects model, which is the lower one, is one where publics use resources in order to influence elites' decisions. And this is possible in particular environments. And if you look at this model carefully, it doesn't actually include any intervention by government elites on the public side, but that invariably is what happens. For instance, with the Korean government seeking to use the popularity of K-pop in public diplomacy. The experiential model has an important additional insight here, and that is that there are sources which agents can activate and treat as resources, which then observers respond to, and they could be targeted observers with feeling and reason, which then leads to satisfaction or dissatisfaction, approval or disapproval, and finally motivation to act. But then also at the lower end, the observer can self-activate based on a source and respond with feeling and reason and the same process. So this is the difference really, where you have the hearts and minds being the locus of soft power. I wonder if you saw and heard Blinken singing at the Global Music Public Diplomacy launch. This was intended to be of political influence. Rave music is meant to entertain paying customers, presumably sans public diplomacy. Here we note an aimless stroller in Paris, discovering Thomas Jefferson's autobiography after stumbling on Shakespeare and Company, the English language bookstore in Paris. If influenced by Jefferson in this way, that influence would be unintended. This is a photograph of an event at the US Center in Colombo. Being exposed to Jefferson's book at a program in such a location would include a public diplomacy intent. I use the term soft bracketed power to refer to unintended attraction-based influence. I have spoken about experiential theory at the individual level. There's also the geopolitical level, one shaped by a self-preservatory will that seeks to limit existential threats. Broad humanistic values are proclaimed by the international system that allows competitive virtue and virtuosity signaling. State agents seek to influence hearts and minds for reasons of virtue, rules, nationalness, and/or expediency. The experiential framework has been used in a co-authored study reported in Chapter 16. The chapter is entitled Assaying Experience of Soft Power, Cold Community Narratives in New South Wales in COVID-19 Pandemic Times. Culturally and linguistically diverse or cold residents of New South Wales were interviewed in focus groups. The data was subjected to narrative analysis and dredged for expressions of positive, negative, and neutral valence in feeling, cognition, and motivation of participants vis-a-vis their living in New South Wales during the pandemic. We have plans to use magnetoencephalography in measuring attraction-based influence apropos K-pop. Additionally, Henrik Onosoga, Alessandro Massa, Giuseppe Anzera, Johannes Schultz, and I are developing a project that will test propositions of experiential theory. They all have chapters in the handbook, except that Johannes has kindly agreed to speak today as well on potential neural mechanisms of social attraction-based influence, despite not having a chapter in books. Thank you, Johannes, especially for that.